Welcome to an audiobook entitled Parish Management and Operations, The Buck Stops Here, narrated by Catholic author Michael Brinda. We hope you enjoy the segment and find it useful in your ministerial work.
Chapter 41, To Share or Not to Share. Now that we have a written PMO statement of culture, do we share it with all employees and volunteers? Or ask another way, who is the statement of culture primarily written for? There are two schools of thought here. A, share the PMO statement of culture with employees and volunteers. Or B, do not share the statement of PMO culture with employees and volunteers because it was written only for its writer. I firmly fall into the latter B school of thought for two reasons. Why? Number one, it is very difficult, to the point of not being worth trying, to explain such a statement to every employee and volunteer. More specifically, we are talking about explaining the statement of culture to every temperament of employee and volunteer, and I can tell you in advance that is a 99% lose-lose proposition with this particular employee-volunteer cadre. This is a mountain I have no intention of climbing when I know in advance there are people, perhaps most people, who work and volunteer in PMO who do not understand business principles, do not even want to understand business principles, and this is a core reason why they do not work in business. They have not had the benefit of reading this book, and so forth. Such inherited employees and volunteers never will understand, much less accept, the application of business principles in a church environment. No thanks, I'm not go there. Reason number two, simply re-listen to reason number one. There's no reason to go there. As such, in light of the above, it is a fair question to ask. If you are not going to share the PMO statement of culture, why was it written in the first place? Why was it created? Now we have dug beneath the topsoil and reached the bedrock of culture creation and maintenance. The primary, and in my management world, the only reason the PMO statement of culture exists is for my benefit as the PMO administrator, to keep my head on straight, to be my execution roadmap and touchstone, to guide my actions and to motivate me so that I personally model to everyone the behaviors that the statement of culture describes and enshrines. Please understand that words on paper are pretty much useless in the context we are discussing, that being killing a broken culture and installing a new culture. How so? Killing your broken culture and installing a new culture is not akin to a contract. It is not a legal construct. It is a process. Culture building is not something that so much lends itself to being understood by reading about it as it lends itself to being understood by seeing the process in action via your personal daily demonstration. And who does the demonstrating of this new correct culture? Who provides the action imagery that dynamically illustrates the correct culture? Who maintains the correct culture once it is enshrined? The PMO administrator, not a piece of paper signed for the file. But you might say, why not both? Why can't I publish the PMO statement of culture for everyone and also demonstrate it? Well, be my guest, but I know human nature, and there are two problems with this approach. Number one, it denies the truth and wisdom embedded above, which fundamentally renders it a non-starter. And number two, it greases the skids for PMO administrators inclined by their own temperament to avoid necessary confrontation with failing employees and volunteers, by thinking that since employees have prior knowledge in writing of what we are seeking in terms of job performance, etc., another mere tacked-up email written word posting will be what you choose to lean on to build your new culture, instead of the only thing you should be leaning on, which is your daily personal example of actually living and modeling the correct culture. Remember, the correct culture is installed from the top down, not the bottom up. Unless and until you are in a position that allows you to demonstrate the pieces of the correct culture face to face, not remotely via endless nanny nuisance phone calls or emails, you will never appreciate, much less fully understand, the singular power of what happens when employees observe their boss demonstrating in person what is meant by working under the correct culture. No piece of paper will ever come remotely close to this effect, so much so as to render publishing such a statement not worth all the derivative misunderstandings and problems publishing it will cause. As such, I am not publishing the PMO Statement of Culture. So, why was it written? It was written for my benefit alone, to keep my PMO administrator compass pointed in the right direction at all times, to keep my eye on the performance ball. It was written as a promise to myself and as a permanent reminder, I will not skip this step. Eventually, gradually, after years, not months, the behaviors that define and embody what we label as the correct culture will simply become a part of who you are, weaved into the fabric of you as a person, even beyond and outside of a PMO context. Only when you are living the correct culture because you do not know any other way, only then can you dispense with the step of writing such a statement in the first place, implicitly knowing that all your actions always personify the correct culture in everything you do. But until that day arrives, you must write and subsequently live a statement of culture as further supported by enhanced language you have added to the parish mission statement. It is in this manner and for these reasons that I advise you to implement the PMO Statement of Culture, but for your eyes only. The bottom line is this. As the PMO administrator, yes, you must create a culture statement in writing, but you do not have to publicly share it. You just have to live it and teach it and adhere to it, whereby you define, not the employees and volunteers who come and go, who work for you and with you, precisely what defines and animates your PMO culture. As has already been made clear, as the culture goes, so goes any organization. All employee and volunteer performance, or the lack thereof, can be traced to your organizational culture, and the PMO culture creation, installation, and modeling starts with the person at the top of the org chart. In the revolving carousel world of constantly changing PMO personnel, superior PMO service consistency and stability is maintained and sustained by the invisible hand of the correct culture. This is a beautiful thing once achieved. Until then, it is brutally hard work. Which do you want? Make your choice. Chapter 42. Why plan? First, a quote from William Rothschild. What do you want to achieve or avoid? The answers to this question are objectives. How will you go about achieving your desired results? The answer to this question you can call strategy. End quote. We have 3 pillars to our PMO foundation. Number 1, an enhanced mission statement that includes language publicly promising our community's superior PMO. Number 2, knowledge that the want, in other words, desire to know, love, and serve God, is already imbued by our Creator in every soul and our job in PMO is to discover and remove the suppression of want or the suppression of desire. Number 3, everything we do as the PMO administrator is animated and supported by our statement of culture, which itself is supported into existence by an enhanced addition to our mission statement language. So what's next? Next, we need the vision of what we want to be transcribed into a written strategic plan of action. How do we accomplish this? The wise PMO administrator borrows proven and time-tested business tools that can be applied in PMO. One such principle and tool, strategic planning, and its byproduct, the written strategic plan. The reasoning animating this planning principle is succinctly and classically stated by the late Senator Fred Thompson, acting in his role as U.S. Navy Admiral Painter in the movie The Hunt for Red October. It is only 9 words in length, but contains 90 years of wisdom. Admiral Painter said, "Russians don't take a dump without a plan, son." Oh, I guess that means planning is pretty important. Must we be agile thinkers who understand the why animating the how? Yes, but just because we are agile thinkers able to hit the curveball, that doesn't mean we can ignore all planning. On the contrary, Benjamin Franklin said, "If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail." We have been discussing facets of PMO that will, upon your arrival at your parish assignment, unless you are extremely lucky, require your immediate attention as an administrator. But where do you start? You start where your strategic plan tells you to start. What does that statement tell you? You must follow your written, I stress written, strategic plan. You cannot take any substantial action in PMO, other than putting out immediate fires, unless and until you have first created a PMO strategic plan. In the same manner you just heard, Russians don't take a dump without a plan, son. You do not make any substantial PMO decisions or moves without first having created a written PMO strategic plan. Oh, wait. Does that mean that unless and until I have in hand a written strategic plan, all my days as the PMO administrator, in other words forever, consist of putting out random fires, handling emergencies, and continuing on with the brokenness I most likely inherited? Yes, that is correct. But what if you claim you don't have any time to create this PMO strategic plan? Well, I guess you better find the time, because you can't go any further in building and delivering superior PMO without one. Wait, let me rephrase. You could press forward without a written strategic plan, but that would be like living in a world of ready, fire, aim. If you were starting your own business, my advice to you would be the same, but there is likely one key difference. Unlike starting your own business without a plan and driving yourself over a cliff, you don't have the right as the PMO administrator to operate in a parish without a strategic plan and drive your parishioners, PMO employees, and volunteers over a cliff. Therefore, when beginning your work as the newly minted PMO administrator, patience is paramount. It is critical you do not do anything substantial in or with or to PMO without first creating your strategic plan, which becomes the requisite blueprint that you will follow to address the who, what, when, where, why, and how of what must be done in all things PMO. By following a strategic plan, a written plan, not simply a plan in your head, the plan will lead your PMO improvements precisely where you want your PMO to go, provided your plan is correct and you can execute under the correct culture. And a discussion on culture and execution follows. But suffice it to say, number one, to merely have a strategic plan in hand is not enough, and number two, To operate without a strategic plan, which is to say to operate without a blueprint, is, as we have already stated, unwise, not advised, and affords you only a 1 in 360-degree lucky chance of directing you where you not only need to be, but must be, in order to provide superior PMO services. That's right. Luck can play a role in success. Do some parishes get lucky? Yes. But is luck what you want to rely on? No, or at least I don't. Therefore, you need a written strategic plan. A quote now from Jack Welch. You've got to eat while you dream. You've got to deliver on short-range commitments while you develop a long-range strategy in vision and implement it. The success of doing both, walking and chewing gum if you will, getting it done in the short range and delivering a long-range plan and executing on that is strategic planning. End quote. It does not matter how dysfunctional you may find the state of PMO upon your arrival. Short of putting out the most obvious fires that cannot be ignored, you do not touch anything until you finish your PMO strategic plan. This point is paramount. The good news? The creation of a strategic plan in a PMO context is not as daunting as it may sound. But if you start tinkering with PMO without the benefit of a well-crafted strategic plan, you will at best just be reshuffling the mess you inherited for a newer mess of your own creation. Why? Because broken PMO is always a holistic problem solved via a holistic solution. It is not a, well, if I just fix these 1 or 2 problems over here, then everything will be great type of a problem to solve. This is not the nature of why broken PMO exists in the first place, or how you go about fixing broken PMO. If you do not have a holistic system solution at your fingertips, guided by a strategic plan, by definition you cannot solve a holistic problem. Implementing piecemeal catch-as-catch-can Band-Aid fixes do not truly solve PMO problems. In all likelihood, piecemeal fixes will only make matters worse. Why? Because every Band-Aid fix simply changes the current problem's DNA and now masks the morphing of a new problem of your own creation lurking beneath the surface. In other words, you create new problems with piecemeal solutions. Therefore, if creating a strategic plan is mandatory before taking action and making improvements, upon your arrival you must acknowledge that time is of the essence. If you habitually push the creation, delegation, or completion of the PMO strategic plan to the back burner, chronic mediocrity, or worse, is the implicit byproduct of your decision to defer or delay. It is one thing to prioritize your other duties above creating your PMO strategic plan on an as-needed fire prevention basis. It is one thing to have your PMO administrator time siphoned away by unforeseen emergencies. But it is a guaranteed recipe for failure to consistently ignore creating the strategic plan because you conjure up any and every excuse to avoid this administrator duty. You do not have to like this task. You just have to do it. Further note, you will also waste the honeymoon effect and associated goodwill, the obligatory new guy margin for error vested in you by PMO paid staff and volunteers upon your arrival. Employees and volunteers will initially give you as the new guy the benefit of the doubt that you know what you are doing, until you prove that you really do not have a clue with what you're doing. You are shooting from the hip, and you eventually have to start walking back your piecemeal implementation of so-called ideas and solutions. Why? Because piecemeal idea implementation cannot resolve holistic and systemic problems. Holistic and systemic problems demand a holistic solution, and a holistic solution demands a holistic system approach to PMO, as is being presented herein. Here you are being provided the DNA of a holistic system and approach, but do not pick and choose from this system. Why? because there is no such thing as a little change to DNA. We must also recognize that simply creating a poorly crafted strategic plan for the sake of having a strategic plan for our files is just a waste of time and ensures absolutely nothing except that as you are making your PMO mistakes, you are at least following some written plan while you make them. Again, to have a strategic plan just for the sake of, I have a plan to follow, is not the lesson or message here. What is the lesson and message here? You must craft a brilliant PMO strategic plan that is based on ideas and principles known to do what? Produce superior results. Produce great and abundant fruit. Any plan created for the sake of checking a to-do list box just to have a plan at all will not do. It is only a brilliant PMO strategic plan in hand that you begin to tackle what must be done. Thus, your challenge is straightforward. Create or commission a brilliant PMO strategic plan, not just any plan, as soon as possible. Then and only then can you progress forward toward offering superior PMO services.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.